What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast where you didn't really ask for it, but hey, we're going to give it to you anyways. This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and, well, anything about movies. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee. Hey, guys, listen, if you're searching on the internet for another movie podcast, or you were looking for, another one, you accidentally stumbled across ours, and you kind of peeked inside the door, and you're like, oh, what's going on with this Reel Me In business? Don't be scared. Come on in. We're all film lovers here, and we want you to be passionate about film, just like we're passionate about. We just want to all talk about it together as a big old community. If you're new to the show, welcome once again. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. What we typically do is we'll go over some movie news and some movie trailers that drop throughout the week, and we will commentate on them for you guys, and then we'll have a review of a movie that comes out that particular weekend, whether it be a blockbuster, an indie film, two indie films, two blockbusters, or a mix mash of each one. We like to mix up every now and then to keep it funky, fresh on this podcast, and not just do all blockbusters, all indies, but give you guys the full spectrum. And of course, the box office results to accompany that. This is episode 234, and the main review on hand is Incredibles 2. And you're probably wondering, hey, I've been listening to this podcast for like 4 or 5 years. Well, first of all, thank you. I've been listening to it for 4 or 5 years. You guys usually do this on Sunday. Well, a couple of weekends ago, some jackhole in my apartment complex decided to turn the switchers on the switcher board outside, and so it shut off the power, and Joel and I were not able to record our upgrade review. So just to make it up to you guys, the Hereditary and First Reformed podcast was last Sunday, and now we're giving you the Incredibles 2 one today on Friday, so you get 2 days early just to make up for that little mishap. Before I hand it over to my co-host, before we begin, please spread this around, share it, like, comment, all that stuff, and let people know this is the definitive movie podcast on the interwebs, and you guys like listening to it. Speaking of the co-host over there, Joseph, how are we doing this week?
Pretty well. Not a lot's happened since I last left you guys. But yeah, been a pretty steady week. Pretty uneventful though. At least just 5 days. Of course, Sunday's Father's Day as of this recording. So that'll be fun. I don't think we have anything specific planned, but we'll be hanging out here at the house, probably going somewhere. That's about it. So how are you doing this week?
Wow, what a very basic week. Usually, like, Joel's like, I conquered like a war. I like saw 1,000 movies. I like walked a dog or something. It's like,
I mean,
cool.
Hey, I did solve world peace.
That's why I thought we have our own Jerry Kushner on the show. So with my week, it was pretty eventful, I guess. Just kind of chilled, watched my normal shows I watched throughout the week. Westworld, and I want to check out Succession, or I believe that's what it is. It's the other HBO show from Adam McKay. I want to watch that, and then. What was it, Wednesday, I rewatched The Incredibles to prep for the sequel, and I hadn't seen it in a long time. And there was a couple things I noticed. One, it's a fantastic film. And two, my 14-year-old self was a dumbass because the only copy I had of The Incredibles was in full screen. It looked awful. Like, everything was cut off, right? So, like, there was a particular dinner scene in the middle of the movie. Mr. Incredible's talking, and Dash is talking as well. But the problem is, Dash is on the left. Most of the screen is cut off on his face, so only half of his face shows. And I'm like, oh my god, my teenage self was so stupid. I don't know why I had this full screen obsession. Why can't I just do widescreen like normal, smart people? I was an idiot. So there you go. That was my experience with that. But, it was a great watch to kind of catch up with that. And I also watched two movies from two different directors that contacted me to ask if I could review their film for them. I liked one of them, did not really particularly like the other one. I feel bad just because, they're like, hey, watch our movie. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to be honest and stuff. And I am honest. And, I probably make some enemies in the process. So that's just how that goes. But, yeah, I'm excited to talk about the sequel Joel, it's been a 14-year wait. I was real quick before we get into the news. I was 14, so I would have been a freshman in high school. So if you want to creep on me and go on my Facebook and search from high school photos, that was just a big son of a gun. That's just what I was, and I was just gross looking. I looked like just this little squeaky nerd that played the trombone and played video games and couldn't pick up ladies. I was just the ultimate badass, if you will. So that's where I was when the first one came out. Joel, what? Because you and I are around the same age, so you were in high school, seeing the first ones and whatnot. Does it just feel surreal that you and I are almost 50 years old and the sequel is just now coming out?
Almost 50. Yeah, it is pretty crazy. I had just turned 15 3 days before that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it was kind of a nice little Pixar gift, and obviously by then I was in, because obviously I was around for Toy Story coming out, never seen anything like it. So through Bugs Life and Toy Story 2 and Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, they were already several movies in, and it was really exciting to see. And I hadn't really seen anything like that from them before, because they had not made a movie where the main characters were humans. They'd included humans in their movies, but no movie where the specific main characters were humans, unless you count Boo from Monsters Inc. But yeah, I mean it was pretty great. It was pretty great. It was a new kind of experience from them, and it was neat seeing it as a teenager right before all of the brand universes came out, and
right.
all of the cinematic big time sagas, and it was several years before Iron Man came out and started the whole MCU. It was before even.
It was a year. This blows my mind. I was just thinking about this. It was a year before Batman Begins.
It was
insane.
a full. I think it was a matter of months. I think it was maybe 7 or 8 months before that, and so that's crazy too. That whole thing. X-Men was 2 movies in, and Spider-Man was 2 movies in. So, and Spider-Man had just gotten 2 movies in. So, because Spider-Man 2 came out just months before that. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And I watched it again too on Wednesday night. We probably watched it at around the same time.
We like to coordinate that for if you guys are listening. You're probably just do Joel and Chase watch movies together? We actually do. We call each other on speaker. My girlfriend does not like that, but I tell her that Joel's my side boo, and I have to give him love and attention too.
Oh boy, yes, love you, baby. Speaking of full screen, so in the past week or so, I've taken up the job of writing an essay for a Facebook group about why Mission Impossible 2, which is the least popular movie of the series, is my favorite movie of the series. And so, in order to do that, I wanted to go ahead and watch the whole series just to have it fresh in my mind. Obviously, I was going to do that anyway, and because Fallout's coming, and I only have one more to go. But I am going to be rebuying our copy of Mission Impossible 3 because it is on full screen DVD, and it looks so awkward that way because those movies are built for widescreen. So. Just an FYI, obviously it's what it means when you put in a disc and it says it has been modified to fit your screen. It basically just means, literally, it's now been modified to look worse on your TV. It's really bad. Unless it was naturally filmed in full screen. Then it only looks awkward because that's just how it was. So, but yeah, it was pretty bad.
Joel, I'm already embarrassed enough that I had a full screen copy of a movie. I still have several full screen copies, and it makes me angry.
He does.
Yeah, I know. You've seen my collection is quite horrid. So let's diverge from that a little bit, and let's talk about some news, because this is this is quite a diverse group of news stories.
Yeah, it's kind of a downer week, honestly.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot that happened. There was a lot of casting news, which I like to push past, and a lot of the casting news was very interesting this week. But there were a couple of fairly significant items, not a lot to talk about with them. But there was another thing that's a big conversation starter, and I'll get to that last. And that's going to be a bit of a discussion. But the first two things, of course, Bohemian Rhapsody is coming out on my birthday, November 2nd. And, there's been a kind of a big question mark hanging over this movie. Who's going to get the director the director credit for it? Because while Dexter Fletcher came in, he was, of course, the director of Eddie's Eagle. He also was in that movie Terminal just recently with Margot Robbie. He came in and directed part of it, but reports have been kind of conflicting about how much Bryan Singer directed it. And as we learn, he directed about 75%, maybe even more. So now the big news item is that he's going to be receiving a director credit. And I just want to tell people, like, I've seen a lot of people reacting very strongly to this, and I understand why completely. Singer's name is, among those, not recently, but among those because of the recent, outages of people that are terrible. He's kind of come back into the conversation for a lot of his predatorial tendencies. And I just want to tell people, like, I understand that, and I'm there with you on this, but and this is not an excuse, but it's really difficult to bypass DGA rules. And so if somebody has directed most of a movie, literally basically nothing will stop them from getting a credit if they've earned it through their work. And the fact of the matter is, even though it was a horrible production when he was on there because he constantly quarreled with Rami Malek, he left the set like days at a time and wouldn't show up. So I'm assuming second unit people came in. But yeah, I mean, if he directed or was credited or received the credit through work for the amount of movie that he directed, then he's obviously he has to have the credit. Now, does he deserve it on the basis of himself? No, absolutely not. That's a whole other discussion, though. Right now, the discussion is that we are indeed going to actually have another movie with him in it, with him, credited as its director. Probably the last one ever. Very likely, unless something weird happens and he's allowed back in Hollywood. I don't suspect that'll happen right now. But for now, yes, he's going to have a director credit with Dexter Fletcher. I don't know if it's going to be like Bryan Singer and Dexter Fletcher, or if it's going to be like a co-director or what. He's going to have some sort of directing credit. And I mean, it's really unfortunate. I wish that there was some way, like some proviso or something that says, if worst comes to worst and the director is basically, if his image is ruined in some way, we don't want to, give off this awful feeling from the movie, but apparently that does not exist. And so as of right now, we have one more director credit for Bryan Singer on the way. So what's your feelings about all this? Is basically just this is terrible, but it's a lost cause?
Yeah, I'm basically on the same wavelength as you. I think people should know that because the story is not about Bryan Singer's personal life, even though he needs to probably be accounted for his actions, considering that they're pretty damning when you hear about them. But if we're talking about DGA rules, if you film a certain amount, you have to be credited. And unfortunately, this is one of those things where he shot most of it, and those are the rules. And unless they change them, we kind of just have to roll with the punches. But Joel's right, though. This is a Kevin Spacey situation. I have a feeling that he's not going to make anything for the longest time.
Right.
After this comes out, like he's going to go into hiding.
I suspect that there was probably some sort of like fiddling with the contract, even if he wasn't involved. Although I guess he would have to be to make him not get basically nearly not a penny. There's going to be some money flowage. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to use it. in this situation, I mean, there's going to be at least a little bit because that's capitalism for you. But yeah, I suspect that there's not going to be a whole lot made on Singer's part for this movie. I think that the credits probably just like a technicality.
So Joel,
Honestly,
I have to flip it back at you then. So, what if Bohemian Rhapsody is an amazing film from a directing standpoint? Do you think, even with all that swirling around, because I know that you always had like the notion that people's personal lives wouldn't really affect votes and whatnot. Do you think that he would be shunned from award season if that was the case?
I believe so because you had the case of Casey Affleck not coming back to present Best Actress.
That's true.
So I feel like there's been a bit of a shift. I think it's a lot slower than probably Affleck's snub would suggest. If honestly, I don't know if Bohemian Rhapsody is going to be huge on the circuit anyway. We don't know how it is as a movie. It obviously looks pretty terrific, according to us. And I'm not backing away from that just because Singer's involved. By the way, I don't do that. I think the movie still looks very good, and I'm going to review it as such.
Because there's a lot more people that work on films besides the director.
Way more. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I think that if it is, then I really don't know. It's a huge question mark. If it becomes like a big Oscar thing or a big Golden Globes thing, for instance, potential music comedy nomination there, I don't know. The HFPA might not care as much. They don't seem as tightly wound as the Oscars have become in the last couple of years as an answer to this trend. But it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it's going to be disheartening if they do allow him back on the in the case that it's a big Oscar thing. But yeah, I don't know. We shall see for sure. I mean, I think honestly the best route if they wanted to do some sort of Oscar thing is to just focus all of their energy on campaigning for Rami Malek.
I agree.
And not the movie so much, because while it could still happen, while there could still be a director nomination for these two, for instance, if they're being credited, they would have to be, unless the Oscars decided that they would just award Dexter Fletcher. I think that their best energy would be put behind Rami Malek, because clearly that's going to be a performance worth paying attention to, at least for now. I mean, obviously it could come out and it's just a broad, impression or whatever, and it's not really Oscar worthy. But if it's a great performance and if it's worthy of being rewarded, then I think that their best energy, especially considering it's an early November release, it's got the potential of being kind of lost in the shuffle with a busy November and December. Especially for the awards season, because you got several movies coming out around then. And you got another big music movie with A Star is Born. It could be that this one kind of just disappears. But yeah, I really don't think that they should allow him there. But, will they? We've known from the past that they do. They gave Roman Polanski Best Director. Now, that was a different time. That was a whole 15 years ago. But it is in their past, and so we will see. Should they? They should not. Will they? That's way more up in the air. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. All right. Any other thoughts, or do you just kind of?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we can't control. It's like
right.
If
yeah.
you do a certain amount, DJ rules, man.
Yeah, exactly. Unless they change them, which they should.
Unless they do.
Yeah, because I have a feeling that even if, Dexter Fletcher directed only 15 to 20%, if something like this happens and the potential casualty is the goodwill of the movie in the audience's eyes, some audiences are not quite as open-minded as we are, then they're going to look at the movie through the colored kind of glasses of Bryan Singer directed it, or co-directed it. and was involved in it in some way. And I think that that's probably going to work not to its favor. And so if the DGA wants that to not happen anymore, if they care enough for it to not happen anymore, then they need to change those rules. Um, kind of maybe bury his involvement some way. If there's some sort of DGA rule that he has to be credited somewhere, then I don't know, throw him into an executive producer slot or something like that, or a producer slot, because at that point he didn't finish filming the movie. He might as well have produced it. You could just do that. But then that opens up a whole thing with the PGA, and I don't know. It's a really it's a tricky thing. It's a very tricky thing. It shouldn't be. It should just be, he gets fired and not credited. But those rules, man, they are tightened up with a belt for sure. But let's move past that. Let's just deal with that when it comes. The next bit of news is a pretty big one. So of course, for months now we've been watching very closely a deal between Disney and Fox for Disney to buy out Fox. But as we find out, another buyer is coming in and potentially giving them a run for their money, and actually they won out. It was Comcast, who they, of course, currently own Focus Features, which you will see anytime a Focus Features thing comes up. It always says a Comcast company underneath. So they already own Focus Features, and they could end up owning Fox Searchlight too, which is going to be strange to see because they have made a bid to buy Fox for $65 billion, billion with a B as in boy, billion, in cash. Now this comes in the wake, of course, of the AT&T buying out Time Warner for $85.4 billion, which, by the way, that's a lot more money because that's $20.4 billion more than this. I hate it. I hate it. I'm a pretty left-leaning guy. Corporatization is a nightmare, and I don't like it, and I don't like it at all. I think that this corporatization of all of the entertainment industries in America is just about ruining the business. It becomes more and more corporate. It becomes more and more, just hollow, and everything's the same, and it's all just. I just don't like it. I just don't like it. I'm not a fan of this. It's obviously there's a lot as this Collider article that I'm looking at right now says. There's a lot more on the line here than just putting the Fantastic Four into the MCU. There's way more moving parts than just that. It's all about how this stuff just corporatizes Hollywood into oblivion. Soon, everything's going to own everything else. Netflix is going to own it all. And then Netflix is going to buy the entire planet. It's just going to happen at some point. And I don't like this. So I'm just going to hand it over to you. I think that this is awful news.
Yeah. Listen, I'm on the same wavelength as Joel. I lean mostly to the left. I'm kind of center left, and I really don't mind capitalism. I realize that a lot of good can come from it, but here's where I draw the line. I don't really like when one company can have that much power, because that's when it's going to crush everything, and we're going to have no choices. It's just going to be that and that only, and that is what's terrifying, is that when you get up to that level of power and wealth, you're kind of unstoppable. And if the government is cool with just approving this, approving this and just letting it kind of roll by, it's like, do you not understand what's at stake? Do you not understand what could happen and what other doors can open for other companies to do this? And Joel's right. It's not just, MCU characters. You're dealing with, especially with the AT&T Time Warner situation. AT&T is getting several movie studios. They're getting HBO. They're getting, all these other services. It's insanity. Like I said, if you're a powerful business, that's cool. I get that. Corporations are there. Like I said, corporations can do good sometimes. But the problem is we live in a country where a lot of people can abuse these loopholes. And when you start just getting very relaxed with these loopholes and these laws, then you're going to have these companies become monopolies. And that's not good. That's not good at all. Because then we're going to be living in all these books that all these authors have been predicting for years, and it's like, do you guys not understand the hints that have been dropping in literature for decades? Like, it blows my mind, and I really wish the government would have shut this down, because
I mean, there was that whole thing where the government was trying to step in to stop the AT&T Time Warner thing.
But see, I know that's the problem, though, is that when you okay something like that, now Comcast is gonna be like, look, what about $100 billion? And then Disney's gonna be like, what about 120? It's gonna get insane. Like, just no.
And then soon Amazon will own everything else. It's just because Jeff Bezos is worth like $700 quadrillion or however much, and it's all gonna everybody's gonna own each other.
and it's a scary future to think about, but that it does give me some hope, because there are companies still like an A24 or like a Leica where they use a lot of money to prop those studios and distribution companies up because someone wants to distribute good product, and I adore people like that. So you keep doing your thing, keep fighting it, and I'm not saying that Joel and I we're boycotting Disney movies or whatever. Like, hell, we're about to review one, but the thing is, like, right now they're pretty powerful with Marvel and Star Wars and Pixar, animation, live action. Comcast has got Universal. It's just so I just wish someone would step in. But the thing is, we live in this country where people they love greed too much, and it's just, Joel, I just want to cry after this podcast. I just want to go in a corner and just weep and realize that you're right, one company is going to control everything. But yeah, this is not good, because if I've learned anything from business, I know this is not a business podcast, but this is very important if this deal goes through to either studio. If Comcast is offering all cash, I can guarantee you that the shareholders at Fox should be like, yeah, we're going with them. Because Disney was offering, like, it was like half stock, half cash, right? So if someone is offering you all cash, they're going to take that offer. And the fact that Comcast basically just unzipped their pants and threw it on the table, it's game over. Like, this is actually going to happen now. And it's frightening, man. It's frightening.
And also, I just want to tell people, like, if you're more right leaning, if this sounds exciting to you, fine. I don't want to get into like some argument in the comments. I personally am terrified by corporatization. I think it's wildly dangerous and wildly restrictive, and it's just bad. So that's my opinion. That's Chase's opinion, clearly. If you have a different thought, let us know if you think this is a good idea and why. But yeah, keep it civil if you do comment. So, all right. So this last thing isn't really a news story per se. Okay. So for a while, there has been a study going on at the USC Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. Essentially, the point of this study, and it's actually kind of a little bit ironic to me that there had to be a study for this. I feel like the study was just a quick scan of Rotten Tomatoes, personally. But apparently there was a study done. It was fairly comprehensive, at least in terms of studying Rotten Tomatoes, that found that only 20% of the reviews from last year of the top 100 most popular movies through Rotten Tomatoes were written. Only 20% of the reviews were written by women. Now, this has started an interesting, occasionally kind of short-sighted from a few viewpoints, but really interesting conversation about, as one article put it in the headline, who gets to, quote unquote, gets to tell people what's good in movies? And they answered it in the headline, white men, apparently. And it got me thinking. It got me thinking about things that are invisible to me and to Chase. It's part of the reason why I think it was a little ironic that a formal study had to be had to be taken on. You can pretty much look at any review, any like segment of reviews, all 260 plus of reviews of a big event movie, and find that a lot of the critics who review it are white men, and it's because in some way, there were at the beginning, people like Pauline Kael, but for the most part, I mean, it was Ebert, it was Saris, it was Siskel, and a lot of other white men. It spawned other white men. Then you had the rise of online critics with Harry Knowles, a white man. Right after him, our good friend Mark, not to put him in the spotlight, but our good friend Mark Dusick, white man, started in 2001. And now it seems that there have been a lot of people kind of left out of the loop there, particularly women, people of color, people of various gender identities and sexual orientations who have been left out of the conversation and underrepresented in writing. And so, setting aside the fact that it was a bit ironic that there had to be a study, looking at the study, it's actually kind of bleak to notice this. And as various people have all been saying, in the midst of this, it all goes back to what Frances McDormand was talking about when she accepted her Oscar about inclusion writers in contracts for films, and I feel like that needs to happen. If there's going to be a place that hires writers for film criticism, which is not a very good market right now, then there needs to be those too, because I feel like there is a place and there should be an outlet for women and writers of color in this industry. And I would assume that Chase agrees. I think anybody sensible would agree with that. But I also have to bring something up, because I think that there's something far, far greater that needs to be done here. And I'm going to bring that up after I let Chase have his say about this particular part of it. Have you specifically noticed all of like this trend before this study came out? Did you like consciously see that there was pretty much a dominance of white men in the field?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, and that's only from my point of view. I actually here on YouTube, I'm subscribed to a lot of female critics. I like to hear many points of view, whether it be guy, female, someone of a different region, whatever. I like hearing all spectrums. Now, I will admit that when I first came on YouTube back in 2006, it was primarily white men, and that is a problem, because I'm totally with you. There needs to be a little bit more diversity, so we can have more voices in this community. But yeah, I'm subscribed to a lot of people. I follow a lot of people on Twitter, YouTube. But I can acknowledge that it's primarily white men, and there needs to be more.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like obviously the solution shouldn't be that fewer people should review movies. I actually think that the field should be bigger in general, and whoever that comes from, it's great. I feel like that should, at least right now, especially right now, I should say, should come from underrepresented writers, and I feel like it's important. But I wanted to bring something else up, because somebody was asking.
And
go ahead.
Just real quick before Joel carries on. Whoever listens to this podcast, if you are a man, woman, someone of color, someone a part of the LGBTQ community, someone who is a right-winger, someone who's a left-winger, it doesn't matter who you are. If you want to get into reviewing film, just do it. I am one of the worst people on this entire platform. I really am. Like, because I'm not professional. I'm all over the place. I stutter all the time, and I'm a white male, but I'm terrible at it. Joel, he's also a white male. He's great at it. I know a lot of people that are not white males that are wonderful at it. If you feel like you have an itch to review film, it doesn't matter what your skin color is, what your gender is, just do it. I did this in my bedroom, and quite frankly, I still do it in my bedroom. I did it in my bedroom almost 5 years ago because someone told me to do it. And I was like, yeah, this sounds pretty fun. And now I'm 200 plus episodes deep because I love doing it. And just this is a message to everyone out there that listens to our podcast that's, overseas, in the States. We welcome diversity. We want, all these voices that listen to our show. If you were thinking about it or you were on the fence about it, please do it. Joel is on the same page with that. We encourage you to just get your voice out there and just help people out and, just help each other out. And I think that's the best way to go about it.
And I would say, just as a bit of unsolicited advice to our listeners who are interested in doing this kind of thing, if it's writing or
don't
or
do it
videos,
like me. Do it like Joel. do not do it like me.
There's definitely not one way to do it. I mean, I almost started doing videos back in 2007, but and I would have been awful at it, honestly. But I would just say unsolicited advice in terms of trying to get started. This is not about the practical ways of getting started. There's various people that you can meet. There's contacts that you can make in your city. Friends that you can, or people you can kind of milk to get that influence going. But on a more personal level, I would say that the two most important things you can do are watch movies. And just watch them. Just go see stuff. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if you're in the demographic. Just go watch movies, and then go home. And if you're going to write about them, and that's going to be your outlet, write. But also read reviews from people. And in fact, that brings me to the other thing. Before I was going to bring this up at the end of this part, at the end of this particular part of the segment, but I'm just going to bring it up right now before I get into the other thing that I think needs to change. And we're just going to pick one. There's many that we could pick, but I want to go to Chase first. Of all of the not white male critics that you follow on YouTube, who is one that you think needs to be followed the most? That is one of the, for instance, one of the women that you watch.
Ooh. What's really funny that you bring that up, because all the ones I do follow have more subscribers than I do. I actually follow like the bigger ones. In terms of ones that are kind of like in our circle, I can't really think of any, because like I said, like I'm all the people I'm subscribed to have way more subscribers than me, and then it's odd because all the people that are subscribed to me, their subscriber count's lower than me, and so it's just a weird kind of chain that's happening right now. But let's see, if I had to, oh man, I forgot what her name is, but I think it's Adele or something like that. She's really good. I think she's in the UK. I really like listening to her. I can't think of them at the top of my head. Guys, I'm subscribed to like 200 people. But yeah, no. But if I had to pick one though,
do you have a subscribe list? Like
I do.
Okay. Well, I'll give my if you want to go glance at that.
I was going to say I'm glancing over it right now.
Okay, so I'll just give my answer. So in terms of writers, this is both a woman and a person of color, and I believe that this person is actually probably not that some people don't already mention her in this context, but I have a feeling that on a wide scale, people are going to mention this person in the same breath as Andrew Sarris, Roger Ebert, everybody like that, Pauline Kael. And I'm gonna probably butcher her last name because it has a little accent in it, a little accented E, so I'm not entirely sure how to say the last name. I'm just going to go for it. Angelica Jade Bastian. That's how I'm going to choose to say that, and if it's wrong, I apologize. She wrote for several months, more than a year, I think, for RogerEbert.com. She also writes, I believe, for the New York Post. Might have the wrong New York Magazine there. And her reviews are, and her writing in general is remarkable, but if you want to go read some of the best reviews ever published at RogerEbert.com, and I'm talking including Ebert's, go just find her among the contributors. She hasn't reviewed anything since Detroit, so I think she might have steered away from it, and found other outlets. But she did review for I think it was about a year and maybe 4 months or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. And they are some of the best reviews on the website. It was stunning writing all around. So that's just one person. I could name a bunch of other people: Emily Yoshida, Allison Wilmore, everybody. There are a lot of absolutely fantastic. Dana Stevens, Manola Dargis, great writers, and go check them out. But definitely, if you want a good place to start, Angelica Jade Bastian is a terrific writer, and greatly personal. So that's my choice, as just a single choice.
Yeah, I was looking through the YouTube channel is Roll Credits, and then the other one is Cinema Darling.
Okay.
Cinema Darling is Francesca, and she was on a couple of hangouts with our friend Brian, and she's really intelligent. And another one I actually like talking to and like reading her reviews. And here's the deal, folks. I admire everyone in the Dallas critics circle for the most part. They don't like me, but I admire like every single person, including Joel. And so like I know they don't listen to this show, so I can gush about them and not feel like a cheesy person. But one of my favorite people to read reviews and just talk to in general, because we're both kind of nerdy about the same things, is Susan Kamyab. She's at a lot of screenings. I like talking to her and reading her stuff. So yeah, a lot of people I follow are definitely diverse. It's not all just white males. To be quite honest with you, the only white males I really listen to are Joel and Mark and Brian. That's basically it. Like I don't really. I mean, I might see like Twitter things every now and then, but like as far as like reading or watching reviews, I don't really.
It's actually interesting. Because I've noticed that a lot of the most interesting writing right now is coming from people who are not white and male, and even on Rotten Tomatoes, I'll flip through reviews, and some of the worst writing that's happening right now is from vets like Jeff Wells or whatever his name is. Was it Jeff Wells? I guess it's Jeff Wells. Anyway, the dude and Rex Reed and all of these people who are just awful. They're just navel gazers basically in their writing, and a lot of the most interesting. I think honestly, like Mark is certainly up there, and I think that right now the best film writer is Angelica Jade Bastian, and it's because of her approach. The poetry of her words, it's stunning. It's stunning writing. You can tell that it comes from a clear perspective, and that's both her own and also very learned. In terms of film history, the things that she will, the references that she will make in a review are just unexpected. Occasionally unexpected. It's just great, and she's doing a lot of TV writing recently, but. Her film writing is off the charts great, and so yeah, a lot of great voices out there. And now what we need to do is get that number up above 20%, and just kind of fill out the spaces more, because with whoever wants to write, because I feel like film criticism needs to grow in general so that it actually becomes a market where people can get paid, because there are people who are paid, but it's basically because of tenure. A lot of the people who are paid are people who have been in the business for a long time and not people who are new to it. So I think that what needs to happen is a shift toward that kind of thing. And part of that right now, especially, will be to hire people who are not white men. And I think that, basically that brings me into the next thing. So I think that there's something a lot more fundamental that needs to change, maybe even before this changes. Because I think that the issue of representation is just one symptom. And I think that, somebody else came up with a great point. So a lot of the rules of film writing were written in large part by white men. So a lot of the standards that you and I hold, even if it's subconsciously, come from so-called rules developed by white men at the beginning of this field. And so everything that kind of we talk about, some of it's inherent. Obviously, if you're talking about the filmmaking in a review, that's paramount to it because otherwise it's not analysis of anything. And there are a lot of people who break those rules, even within the groups of underrepresented writers and all that. They decide to just talk about it in cultural aspects, which is a kind of film criticism, but it's not the kind I'm talking about right now. It's interesting because I feel like a lot of those rules were made by white men. So maybe what needs to happen is there needs to be a cultural shift toward allowing as a solid measuring tool the kinds of things that people of color write about when they review a movie from their perspective as a person of color. That is not something that right now is considered mainstream film criticism. And maybe it should be. I think that needs to be a cultural shift toward that idea being more widely accepted. While keeping, obviously, conserving the inherent rules of film criticism, which is always talk about the filmmaking, even if it's in kind of flippant terms. If the overall movie is mostly a story thing, at least try to bring up the filmmaking and the storytelling and through visual terms and all of that, because you are reviewing a movie. While doing that, we should all try to extend our understanding of what film criticism is to include the kinds of things that are not considered mainstream, that were not dictated by white men, particularly issues of subjective perspectives, of personal experience and all of that. I feel like it's a little too I think it's a little too diluted by white perspectives. And so I have a feeling that that's what needs to change, because I think that's a lot more fundamental to this field than just who is writing what reviews. And so I think that also needs to happen. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, because we reviewed several of them this year so far. It goes back to when we were doing Black Panther back in February, where Joel and I can sit here and we can review the film, but we can also acknowledge as white men that we have no idea what it's like for a film to represent the black community in a positive way. We don't know how that feels, but we recognize it's important, and it's important to have people of that community to step up and, like Joel said, like acknowledge, its importance, but also, review it and, have your different take on it and all that stuff. And that's just, I think that's crucial of, when movies kind of come out and they represent a certain community. I think they should have definitely way more diverse voices in that pool. And Joel and I, we try to review everything, as basic as we can, just from our perspective, and we'll acknowledge if we, with stuff like Black Panther and stuff, just because we will never understand the importance, but we understand that it was an important movie to be made, type of deal. That's just how I kind of look at it. We approach movies, as you say, just review them as its craft, and we will acknowledge if there's any importance. But there should be definitely more diverse voices, especially when talking about that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like we can always you say that we can't understand obviously we can't understand on an experiential level. I feel
It's
like
true.
we can grasp, as you said, the importance of a movie like Black Panther to the black community, to young black people in particular,
Correct.
because obviously those movies are entertainment meant primarily for young people, and it's great to have a character like Black Panther. Um, Even if the movie's politics, and this has become a point for some people, the politics are kind of wonky in that movie, but at least you have um, the image of and it was the same thing with Wonder Woman, of a powerful black man or a powerful woman, and in a movie, and it's empowering. We may not feel that on the experiential level that somebody who's a young black child of either gender, or a young girl, or but not to women aren't a monolith. It's not people aren't a monolith, I should say, because then you have this weird response from the cast of Ocean's 8, who I liked the movie. I saw it last weekend. I thought that it was pretty good. And now you have this weird response from one of the cast members. I think it was Sandra Bullock, who was like, I think male critics gave us the lukewarm reviews that the movie has, and I feel like that's not very helpful, because that kind of erases the opinions of the women that saw the movie and may not have liked it very much, and there certainly were some. Um, but then so there's the suggestion that, for instance, if only women had, or if a majority of women had reviewed it, it would have gotten better reviews, which we can't know because we have the world that we have right now. Uh,
See,
we
I
have
just
we have
I don't I hate when people do that. Like
yeah,
two
and
thousand.
plus it's co-opting a really serious discussion topic to kind of talk about the tomato meter,
Well, I mean,
which
because that's basically insinuating that you and I are going to have lukewarm reviews on anything that isn't about a white male. Case in
yeah.
point, 2016 rolls around. Joel and I rated a movie that was within the LGBTQ community as our favorite movie of the year.
Had no white people in the cast.
Yeah,
It was a point actually that they wouldn't include one. I think there was like a background character basically,
yeah, that's
and
what I'm saying. So
yeah,
like we're two white males, and we rated that movie as our highest, and
yeah.
that's
No,
just
no group is a monolith of itself, and so we're gonna have even within the specific groups, white men, white women, black men, all of the other ones that I'm not going to list right now, because there are a lot of them. You know, we're not gonna. It's not like we all think together. It's not like the different groups have members, all of, if you want to call them members, who all think together. It's even within those, there's going to be diverse opinions. There are women who did not like Ocean's 8. There were black people who did not like Black Panther. So it's
I
not like
work with
there's
one, by the way.
yeah.
I have
And
a black
so
gentleman that, like, on second viewing, because I gave him the digital code for it, he was like, I don't really care for it, but I'm still going to show this to my son one day. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. And so yeah. But let us know your thoughts, folks, because I'm really interested in hearing some opinions about this study. It's certainly very interesting. It was kind of a narrow study. Obviously, I think the number was, I'm looking at it here, 19,559 reviews, that come from 1 year through one specific grouping of movies on a specific site. Not and on that site, not a lot of the critics are included. So, or not nearly as many as people like to imagine. So it's kind of a narrow study, but it's an interesting one and it's an important one. And this is a subject very dear to my heart. So let me know what you think. I mean, obviously there's something that needs to change, and I just want to know what you all think that thing needs to be. Whether it's something that's far beyond the issue of representation, something a lot more fundamental, or if we need to start with something like representation to maybe shine a spotlight on the fact that there's a lot more that needs to be changed about this whole field, because there's obviously a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. All right, so we are going to move to the trailers now. I'm not even going to ask what the favorite bit of news was because there were no good ones, really.
No.
uh, so we'll just move to the trailers. So I gave Chase a bit of homework, kind of, regarding our first trailer. So Chase, do you want to tell the audience what that was and why?
Okay, this is ridiculous. Joel made me fish for a trailer that dropped over a year ago on YouTube, so that was lovely. So this one's called Alpha, and you're probably thinking, wait a minute, hold the phone. Was this something that was released last year? Because there were posters for it, there was a trailer. Did this come out already? Well, trailer number 2 dropped. And so usually at this point, Joel and I do not do second trailers unless they're radically different. And guess what? This is radically different. So I watched the first one, the first trailer. It's basically about a boy and a wolf and its relationship. But the tone of the trailer is like, this boy and this wolf are going to go through the woods and kill people. And it's all about, hunting animals and slaughter and violence. And it's like, oh, wow, this is going to be really, really dark. Kind of random, but okay, it's going to be dark. So the second trailer, I guess someone did not like the cut that they went for. And they're like, ooh, yeah, we should probably make this a kid's film. Because now the second trailer is like, coming this summer, a boy and his wolf. They're going to have a relationship, and they're going to be friends in the woods. It's like, what? This is not the same trailer I watched. I mean, on a visual front, besides some of the questionable CGI, it actually doesn't look bad. Some of the cinematography is quite gorgeous. The production value could use a little work, and the story is not really anything new. I mean, to be honest with you, it's not like an awful trailer, like I said, besides some of the CGI. It's a whatever trailer. But Joel wanted me to bring this up because it's so different from the first one. I could care less about the movie though. But as in terms of a trailer, it's not horrid. But yeah. So Joel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's so weird to watch this trailer because they even use the guy who narrates a lot of animated movie trailers. Yeah. I mean, it's very clear that it's that person. And it's so strange. I mean, the movie looks fine. It looks whatever. It looks like your fairly typical boy and his pet story, just set in prehistoric times and all of that. So I'm certainly going to see it. I think it's probably the only significant thing coming out its particular weekend. So I'm sure. Actually, I don't know what weekend it comes out. I'm going to look that up real fast.
Who knows? It'll probably come out next year when they change the trailer again.
Yeah. That time it'll just be an actual animated movie.
Right.
Interestingly enough, this is directed by a Hughes brother. I just found that out. And then, comes out August 17th. And I think is that the weekend of Happy Time Murders?
I think it is.
Yeah, so never mind. We're probably not going to talk about this. And I think the next weekend is probably going to be Black Klansman coming out in our area. So, yeah, probably not going to be talking about this. In any case, the movie looks whatever. But this trailer is so interesting in the context of the previous one because they're clearly trying to go a completely different route in their – I don't even know – does it suggest to you that they have no idea how to market this, or do you think that they just decided randomly that they wanted to make it look what they thought was more appealing and actually overcompensated on that with a way too flowery trailer? Do you think that it's both maybe?
Well, and the weird thing is it's already rated. It's PG-13.
Yeah.
So, like, why are they pitching this as, like, some family-friendly fare? It's probably got some intense stuff in it. So it's like, what are you doing? It's
crazy. I mean, a wolf itself is just going to be intense. And then you have the fact that it's prehistoric times where, a lot of the injuries are not going to be able to be, very well treated. And so there's going to be a bit of, rawness to the material. It's just really weird. And you're right. I mean, it's like and I told Chase this before we started recording. It's like they jumped trailer-wise. They jumped from 10,000 BC to Alpha and Omega, and it's just very strange. But yeah, not much really to talk about except just the divide between these trailers is so fascinating to me.
Just treat yourself. Watch the first trailer and then watch the second one, and just realize that the marketing team was probably smoking some dank kush and was like, "Okay, we're gonna just drastically change this." It's like, "Why, fam?" And they're just like, "It'll be funny," and it's like,
it's so
"No,
strange.
It's not funny."
Yeah, it's so strange. They're the same movie, and it does not look like it. All right, so our next trailer is a very curious thing. I didn't even know this was coming this week. Did we get any notification about this? Because I don't.
I had a sneaky suspicion they would, only because Incredibles 2 was coming out, Disney, and I was like, yeah, they might have a teaser or something for it.
Yeah, it's so weird. I didn't realize, honestly, that they would have a trailer for it. But Dumbo is coming out. It's one of their next, live action reimaginings of one of their catalog movies. And this one obviously is an imagining of the 1941 film that I haven't seen since I was like 5. I don't have great memory of it. I know that it was one that I liked, but yeah. So this one has a pretty cool cast. It's got Colin Farrell, Michael Keaton in a wig, as I'm going to call him from now on. Michael Keaton in a wig. Danny DeVito, Ava Green, and Alan Arkin. Pretty cool cast, gotta say. I'm liking the looks of that. But it's from director Tim Burton, who, just for me, is the strangest person to take on this material. But it is pretty cool because you have Michael Keaton, of course, and then you have Danny DeVito. So this is a Batman Returns reunion, and the trailer's pretty cute. I gotta say, it's not like some super special thing, but it certainly looks like certainly looks like a Tim Burton movie, visually speaking. Definitely is the cinematography is by actually the Avengers cinematographer, Ben Davis. He did the second Avengers. He did Doctor Strange. So this is a different person working with Burton than usual, but certainly looks otherwise to be like your usual Burton movie. Hopefully, and this is just me. Hopefully, this is the first good Tim Burton movie since Sweeney Todd. That's what I'm hoping, because I haven't liked anything since then. I like a lot of his early stuff, but he's really fallen on hard times recently. He's taken on projects and kind of torpedoed them with either too much garish nonsense, like with Alice in Wonderland, or just kind of a very typical traditional style that was not very compelling, like with Big Eyes. And I guess also Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children would fall into that. A lot of people like Frankenweenie. I don't. I see the appeal. I'm not a huge fan. And then Dark Shadows was just kind of whatever. So I think that he's just kind of fallen on hard times in recent years, and I'm hoping that this bounces him back. As of now, I think it looks cute and not much else. It definitely has a vibe of, that seems like it definitely exists in the same breath as, stuff like Beauty and the Beast and the Jungle Book. But I'm hoping it's more like the Jungle Book and less like Beauty and the Beast. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it's fine. It's a good enough teaser to get people ready for it. And I think the CGI on Dumbo looks pretty good. We got a little brief glimpse in one of the shots with the hallucination pink elephant scene.
Yes.
We got
I am looking forward to that.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that because Burton directing that scene.
Oh my god!
I mean, it's gonna be the most Burton-esque thing in the movie.
He's going to traumatize children, and I said this ever since he was attached to it. But yeah. Besides Michael Keaton's really awful Halloween wig, everything else looks decent. It kind of reminded me of cinematography wise and production wise of Big Fish. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with that. I like that movie. So, yeah
Big Fish is actually my favorite Tim Burton movie.
Interesting.
Yeah. I know that it's, maybe Ed Wood. It's kind of between the two. But if it is Big Fish, it's just ironic that it's one of the ones without Johnny Depp.
Right.
But in any case, yeah, I do agree. I think that in terms of like the production design and the backgrounds and stuff, obviously there were similar places that the characters went in Big Fish.
Yeah.
So that's not surprising. But yeah, I think I'm most excited to see Danny DeVito in a movie like this because he obviously worked well the last time he was with with Burton. Batman Returns is my favorite pre-Nolan Batman movie. So yeah, I'm really I'm certainly curious. I'm not super excited. We'll have to see what a second trailer does. This is definitely one that we would cover, by the way, if there's a second trailer. This is big Disney movie. So whenever a second trailer comes out, I'm sure that we will talk about it. I'm just waiting for that Pinocchio movie, man.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's gonna be crazy, especially if they can get Downey as Geppetto.
Yeah,
That would be really
yeah. Hopefully
awesome.
that comes back together because that'll be really cool. I know that it's kind of always been on the fence, but maybe post Avengers he can take on that role because
Well,
that's
he's already doing Doctor Dolittle, so you might as well
Yeah, that's
keep on
true.
the train, right? So
yeah, right, exactly.
but yeah, Dumbo was a good little start. But this one, guys, when we were doing the top 5 anticipated of the year, this one definitely came across my radar just because of the director and the cast involved. But this one's called The Little Stranger, and it's directed by Lenny Abramson. Who is that, you may ask? Well, he directed a little film called Room, not The Room, but Room, and that was, I think, my third favorite film of that year. Brie Larson won the Oscar for it, so anything that he was going to do and follow up with, I was on board with already. This looks fantastic. So The Little Stranger is basically about Donald Gleason's character. He's like a doctor. It's set in the 1940s, and he goes to this house, and he treats someone, and basically it turns into a haunted house ghost story, or so we think. I actually don't even think it's about paranormal activity at all, but the trailer reminded me a lot of The Others, and The Others is quite possibly one of my favorite horror films I've ever seen. That twist still gets me to this day. It is a fantastic little film with Nicole Kidman. Please check it out. But it had the vibe of The Others, where The Others, when you watch it, it relies on paranormal type of ghost, not jump scares per se, but more of just atmospheric, like, kind of dread, and that's what it kind of relies on until you get to the twist, and you're like, oh, this wasn't really a horror movie after all. It was more of a drama. And so The Little Stranger
it's a very sad movie.
Yeah. God, Joel, don't even say that because now I'm thinking about the ending. But The Little Stranger, it kind of reminded me of that, where it's going to appear like horror, but it's going to be more of a family drama. And we just got done with the movie like that with Hereditary. So I'm excited to see another movie in that vein, and the trailer looks great.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic trailer, and I can't wait to see this. A lot of people have been saying that it looks familiar and all that, and sure, I mean, I guess that it's sort of also like Hereditary, where they're clearly using the usual elements of something like a supernatural thriller, like The Others did, until that point that you're talking about. And I feel like this is another case of that kind of movie leading to that kind of experience. Because it looks a lot deeper and sadder than the usual. And I would not be surprised if this is a top 10 contender, or at least top 10 honorable mention contender quality, because it looks really terrific and atmospheric. And I can't wait to see what I think it's Abrahamson, honestly, but I don't know. I think that's
guys. I was like a A, B, C, D, and F student in English in high school, so you can't really account for me on anything with pronunciation.
Yeah, I think I heard somebody call him that. Maybe I heard it at the Oscars. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, this director, moving from a heightened drama like Room, to this is very interesting, and I'm excited. And then before Room, there was Frank. His movie with Michael Fassbender that was quite good. Not as good as Room was, but
and if you think about it, Room is actually, without the kind of paranormal, like old timey feel, it is kind of like a horror drama.
It is, yeah. I mean, certainly in terms of the perspective that they take.
Correct.
The family being just shut in this little room for a while, with a big stranger outside. Okay.
Oh, God.
So yeah, it's a great trailer. I actually kind of heard the comments about it being familiar and kind of underwhelming or whatever from some people before I watched it. So I had those in mind. And then when I watched it, I was like, what? This looks really good. And you're right, by the way, it does look very much like the others, or like The Village.
Or that too, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, where it's a movie that's kind of constructed as a puzzle that where you have to solve the riddle at the end. But when they get to the end, it's actually much sadder. It's more about the hindsight impact that it makes on the story, and it's less of a riddle being solved or it's less of a twist than a riddle being solved, basically. But with very sad results. And the others in The Village are a great pairing of that, and Hereditary as well. So I'm very excited for this. You know what I'm also more excited for than I probably should be is our next movie. This one looks a lot more generic, but I think it still looks pretty cool, and it's The Nun. This has got the It release date, by the way. The kind of the second weekend in September. Technically the first Friday, but it's the second weekend. And it's obviously going to make a lot of cash because of that. And it's the spinoff from The Conjuring. We're getting another spinoff, yes. This one is about the nun figure in the painting. And yeah, we're just going to find out where she comes from. We're going to see her kind of scare some people for the first time or whatever. And I think it looks pretty stylish. Completely unnecessary, of course, but I'm down. I'll probably catch up with Annabelle Creation before this just because of completionism. But yeah, I'm a lot more excited for this than I was to see that, and I still haven't even seen that. So that kind of gives you an idea. So yeah, I think it looks pretty solid. I wasn't like blown away by the trailer though. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, you guys know I'm a huge James Wan fan, and pretty much anything within his little Conjuring universe. Now, the only one I have not seen is the first Annabelle. I did see Annabelle Creation. I quite enjoyed that as a nice little spinoff, but I enjoyed The Conjuring. And I'm one of those weird folks online that loves the sequel even more, and people...
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, see, Joel does too, and people poop on the second one. It's like, why? The second one is actually a lot more frightening than the first one.
Probably because it's the second one to a horror movie. Those always have the... Yeah, exactly.
Get that out of your mind, people. But in terms of the nun in the actual trailer... It is exactly like a James Wan movie, which is so great because he doesn't even direct these movies anymore. He produces, and yet these directors take that style and they make it consistent. Because the one thing that's really great about the Conjuring universe, which by the way I'll get into a little, not a gripe, but I'm not gonna call this person out, but I'm gonna say something. But in terms of the actual visual consistency, it's great, and the utilization of blockbuster horror films, but actually, shooting it, editing it, lighting it, and directing it in such a kind of unique and slick manner, that's what makes it stick out. Because The Nun, just like what Joel said, it may be a terrible movie, but I'm still looking forward to it because I'm a fan of this type of blockbuster style that James Wan has brought to the industry, where he utilizes jump scares actually in a creative way, and it's something that you don't see much of anymore, except for when it comes to these movies. And that's why these movies consistently work for people and work for crazy people like Joel and I. And so the thing I have to point out, someone on Twitter that I follow actually lives in Dallas. There's a couple of I will just say cynical folk where they don't really like much. But I still like following them because I still like hearing their opinions. And there was one guy that was like, the people that like the Nun trailer don't like, are the ones that say the Hereditary was terrible. That's not true. I like both. You give me blockbuster popcorn horror, I'm all for it. You give me Hereditary, which is like a mishmash of horror, drama, and a bunch of other sub-horror genres, I'm all for it. I like both. Why can't we just like both, folks? We don't have to pick one or the other. But yeah, yeah, strangely enough, the trailer got me with that last jump scare. I was like, they're going to flip the camera, He's going to do the James Wan reveal, and boom, there's the nun, and it's like, okay, cool. And then I'm like, where is it going to happen? Because I know how Wan's jump scares operate, and I was waiting for it, Joel, and then I was like, I think I took like a sigh of relief, and then the jump scare happened. I was like, I almost choked in my water, and I was like, see, I took my mind off of it, and they still got me. So, but yeah, the trailer was effective for what they were trying to go for. Like Joel said, is it necessary? Hell no, but I'm still going to go see it.
Yeah, I mean, but no, Chase, we always have to be completely consistent. And we always have to think highbrow. All right. So, yeah, looks like a pretty solid fun time. So even if it's like bad, it'll probably be a fun bad.
Oh, for sure.
I can't imagine that it's not fun to some degree. That's the thing. Hopefully I haven't jinxed it, and hopefully it's not boring now.
Look what you've done, Joel.
So bring us into the next trailer, and obviously this is one of the trailers that we rolled over from last week, just because it was so packed. So it's a second trailer.
Correct.
So tell us what that is.
Yeah, so we already reviewed the first trailer, and I still have the same thoughts, but I still have to talk about it because it's a wonderful trailer. It's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's the new Spider-Man film that's going to focus on Miles Morales instead of Peter Parker. It's animated. It's going to take place in a different universe, and it comes out in December from Sony. And you know what? From the same studio that brought you the Emoji Movie, they stepped up their game and was like, you know what? We can actually do something good with our animation department, and this is what this is. I absolutely love the comic book-esque 2D hand-drawn mixed in with the 3D backgrounds, mixed in with like the kind of like colors that are a little off-kilter. Nothing's like I don't want to say symmetrical, but like you know how like when you look at something like in an anime movie, and it's like, okay, cool, the colors they're nice and present. There's something about the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse trailer where the colors almost seem kind of like off of the objects a little bit, and that kind of adds to the comic book quality. And so I thought the pace of it was really well done. The voice acting looks really spot on. It was funny. It was engaging, and you know what? For being a pretty big fan of the, Tom Holland Spider-Man that we got last year, I'm excited to see this kind of different take on Spider-Man that we've really never seen before in this animated form, and focusing on a different character and just having a unique experience since we've already had 3 reboots of this character now. It's nice to actually have some variation in terms of its medium. So, yeah, just like with the first trailer, man, I am totally down for this. I can't wait to see this.
Oh, yeah, this is probably my most anticipated big movie of December.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, there's a lot of smaller stuff that we've got to find out whether it comes out. So I'm excluding all of that. Right now, of the big movies that we know about, I think I'm most excited about this. It just looks so visually stunning. I mean, it just looks like a total treat for the eyes, but not in a way that's overwhelming. It's not like big garish, cotton candy movie. It looks genuinely beautiful. They utilize blue so well here. And I can't wait. It also looks really touching in terms of the story because this is a character we don't know cinematically yet. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with Miles Morales. I don't know his deal. So I'm excited to see this new version of the character, like you said. It's a great second trailer, and it goes together well with the first trailer, which pretty much gave me the same feeling. So, yeah, as of right now, I mean, of the big movies coming out in December, I think I'm most excited for this. So, yeah, what's the date? I think it comes out before the big influx, right?
Yeah, the slew of movies that are going to sabotage each other.
Yeah, December 14th is what I thought.
The week before. Yeah,
so I'm really excited. It'll be nice to see this before the onslaught. So hopefully something moves from that release date soon. But until then, we got this, and I'm excited. Speaking of which, Haley Steinfeld is in this too. So that's really weird. And then she's turning around and she's going to be in Bumblebee the next week. So yeah. All right, guys, our last trailer is another second trailer that I decided to roll over from the previous week. And it's my favorite trailer of the week. This is Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet. We had a first trailer a while back. Now we have a new one that pretty much does everything correctly, I think. It utilizes a really cool Daft Punk song. It kind of introduces us a little bit more to the premise, which is that Wreck-It Ralph and Princess, is it Vanellope?
It is, Vanellope.
Yeah, Vanellope, yeah. Go into the internet this time, and then we we get this great scene at the end where they enter a website, and Vanellope encounters a lot of other Disney princesses like Moana and Elsa and Rapunzel and Ariel. Well, not Ariel. I don't think we see her there. And Snow White and all that. We see them, and Vanellope says, "I am a princess," and then they all ask her things to find out whether she really is a princess, and they are all absolutely hilarious in increasingly worrisome ways. Because what they do is they ask, have you been poisoned? Have you been enslaved or kidnapped? And then the final one is the funniest one, where have you done a lot of heroic things? And then people give the credits to the men, which is so funny. And of course, she confirms that that's a thing that annoys her. It's just so funny. And I sort of had the same vibe as the Lego Movie 2 trailer, where the villain is, or I think it's the villain, is asking the Wildfire about whether or not, or Wildstyle, sorry, about whether or not the hapless male was made the leader after all of her hard work. It's just like this. There's this little moment now in animated movies where we're coming to terms with that, because the 90s was not a great decade for female characters in Disney movies. I've been noticing that just by listening to the soundtracks at work, and it's always very kind of a bit regressive. And now we're making a little bit of progress, and it's cool to see that. But it's also really funny to see that because they're putting it in such blunt terms, and I like that. I appreciate that. It ends on a really funny joke. It looks just charming as heck. And I can't wait to see it. This one comes out in November, so Thanksgiving week, I believe. So, I'm so excited for this. First in line. I love the first movie, and I can't wait to see this one. So,
same. I mean, one of my favorite movie experiences was with my brother, and we saw Wreck-It Ralph late at night in 2012, and we adored it, dude. Like and that was my pick for best animated movie at the Oscars. Yeah, obviously it didn't win, but it was so charming and so colorful and vibrant and just fun to follow these characters. And I still stand by this, just like what I do with like Tom Hanks or Tim Allen when he voiced Buzz, and of course Tom with Woody. I thought the first Wreck-It Ralph, and I still think it will for this one, the first Wreck-It Ralph had some of the best voice casting for an animated movie that I had seen in quite some time. I think John C. Reilly is literally the perfect person to play Ralph. And I think Sarah Silverman and Jack McBrayer in the first one, and even Jane Lynch, they were perfect casting, and they completely embodied the animated styles of their characters. John C. Reilly's voice coming out of Ralph, it's just, you don't even hear John C. Reilly. You're like, that's Ralph. And the only thing that made me maybe cringe a little bit, I'm not going to lie, and people are be like, well, the Emoji Movie did it. It was the whole Disney patting themselves on the back when they went to the Disney website. That's the only time I like kind of shuddered a little bit. And I never saw the Emoji Movie, but I am fully aware of what they point out in there in terms of websites and stuff. I get it. People getting angry at the self-promotion. It did kind of turn me off just a hair, but I think the overall charm and flow of the trailer, and even what Joel said with the humor, it works for me. Even at the very end with the the princesses poking fun at all the tropes from back in the day. Those are Disney princesses. They're poking fun at themselves, and I think it's nice and playful, and it's like what Joel said, it's progressing in the right way. And I was actually surprised that they got everyone to come back to do all the voices with Mandy Moore and Rapunzel, Kristen Bell and Anna, and of course Adele Dazeem for Elsa. See, you thought I wouldn't bring back that joke. John Travolta, your jokes will never die.
Don't you mean Jorn Tremolto?
Jorn Tremolto. That sounds like a really bad Italian dish. I want the Jorn Tremolto, please. No, it was really cool to hear all their even the woman whose name I cannot pronounce because I'm so dumb. The one that played Moana. It was cool to bring her back. It's like they got everyone that plays their respective princesses to come back, and it's such a wonderful trailer. So even with this trailer and the last trailer, both of the in-jokes were fantastic. I still laugh when I think about the rabbit one in the first trailer with the rabbit eating so much and blowing up and the kids screaming in the back of the seat oh my God. Oh, it's so great. But
I honestly would not be surprised if this is absolutely one of the best movies of the year. I just wouldn't be surprised. And another thing that makes me think that is because the action sequences in the first film were so spot on.
Yeah, they really were.
It was not just a really funny, good time. It was a genuinely thrilling entertainment at times. And
especially
I think that
with
this
the whole, kind of Mario Kart-esque race that they had in the middle of the movie.
Yes, yeah. I mean, just the character that Jane Lynch voices.
In the Halo type game. Oh, I love that. It was so cool.
It's great, and I think that they're gonna. They have to take advantage of that in some way in this one, and I can't wait. And it's sort of tied into our review in that way because it's obviously an animated action comedy, and we are, and it's a sequel. And so let's get on with our review. Chase, are you ready for this?
Let's do it. 14 years in the making, folks.
I was literally opening my mouth to say that.
Oh, you know what, Joel? That's why I hired you to be the co-host, because your segues were a little rough at first, but now they're getting better, and you make me so proud. And I had a tear roll down my face when you said I was going to say that. I'm like, oh, that's genius. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Father. All right. So, all right. Guys, this is it. Incredibles 2 is our main review. This, of course, is a sequel to The Incredibles from 2004, 14 years in the making. And this one, ironically enough, picks up right where the first one left off, which, if you remember, was our team, our familial team of superheroes, the Pars, are facing off against a new villain called the Underminer. Who has a big drill. He comes from underground, and he's got some, bones to pick. And they thwart that, but in the meantime, they end up, revealing themselves. And if you remember from the first film, superheroes are illegal. Now, the reason that superheroes are illegal in the first movie is because that movie came out at a time where a lot of the commentary being made about superheroes was that they had to kind of be a bit repressive of their talents. It was a big theme in the X-Men movies, of course. It's always a theme in the X-Men movies. It was a big theme in Spider-Man 2 that had just come out because of the strain that it puts on Peter Parker. And those were really the only superhero movies that were really big at the time. Obviously, it had the Batman movies kind of went down in flames with Batman and Robin. So it was a completely different time for the superhero genre in movies. Now, of course, there are a lot of branded universes. There's various cinematic universes being formulated or in the works already, like the MCU and the DCEU. So it's a completely different time. So I think that it's honestly kind of a bit of a not a joke, because I don't want to say joke in a bad way, but it is kind of a gag a bit. That now we have a sequel to a movie that opened in just a different market. Now this one opens up in the same place that the first one left off, and so that's pretty interesting to me. And so, obviously hearing all of that before the movie, I was really excited because it was different. It's not something that we're used to anymore. We're not really used to seeing repressive superhero narratives right now, at least not a lot, because they're a lot more open in the MCU than they were in the X-Men. So yeah, that's where this one starts off. So they end up revealing themselves, and they are barred from public life until a businessman kind of comes up and says, "Hey, I want to try to fight back against this law that's been written that keeps superheroes underground, and I can do that if there's a spokesperson." And they choose Elastigirl, voiced by Holly Hunter. Meanwhile, Mr. Incredible, voiced by Craig T. Nelson, has to keep control of their children. And that's basically while Mom, of course, goes out and fights crime and has her own little plots. So the movie kind of splits evenly between Mr. Incredible's attempt to be a father, a really super involved father for the first time, especially with Jack, the baby, discovering his own powers. And Violet, their daughter, is having trouble with boys, and Dash is kind of just being Dash, and all of that. It's family once again, and that's what the subject of this movie is. So yeah, I was really looking forward to this. I'm an enormous fan of the first film. I think it's, if not a masterpiece, then very close to one. Certainly would be in the conversation to be one. And I think it's one of the best films in Pixar's filmography. So, as for the second one, I think that it isn't as good as the first film, but what is, really? So that's not really a complaint so much as just a caveat. I don't think it's as successful an overall experience as the first movie, but I think it's a really satisfying one. And it's a pretty terrific movie. So that's my initial thought. Chase, I'll hand it over to you.
That's very interesting to hear that come out of your mouth, because I still have yet to know what he thinks of the movie. So yeah, I like the first one quite a bit. We both saw it around high school time, so we were not children when this came out, but it came out at the right age of us, because we were teenagers, and we're into the comic books and stuff, and we're into the fantasy and the superhero stuff. So that came out at a perfect time. And, Pixar was on a hot streak back in the day, and they still are to some extent. But back in the day, when you're slinging Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Up, Ratatouille, you were on the top of your game. Notice how I didn't mention Cars? Listen. With the first one, I hadn't seen it in a while, and that's why I really wanted to watch it before the sequel, because I wanted to see what it's like, animation-wise, story-wise. What is it going to feel like picking up after a movie 14 years later? Is it going to feel like the first one? Is it going to feel different? Obviously, the animation is going to be a bit of an upgrade. That was the only thing that I was going to probably notice. So I saw the sequel. A few things. One, I hated this movie because I wanted to see a third one immediately. And that made me so angry, because I was like, damn you, Brad Bird. Damn you. Now I probably have to wait another 2 decades for the next one. Because I was just so into it, and I was like, I don't want this to end. And
2032,
yeah,
man.
Right? Joel and I will be dead by that point. And the second thing is, I've been seeing a lot of people bring this up in their reviews. Not to what Joel is saying, quite frankly. It's more of this was disappointing. It didn't live up to the hype. And, you guys know Joel's stance on the whole hype thing. I actually think if you watch them back to back as a double feature, it's like one long movie. It's a really wonderful double feature. And that's how I kind of viewed it. I don't know if that was meant to be that way. And maybe because that's just because how it picks up right after the first one. But I was just kind of replaying the first one through my head right before the second one started. And I was like, this really makes a pretty great double feature while still standing on their own. Now, I will kind of agree with Joel. The problem is with like the first one coming out and being as great as it is that it's something we've really never seen before. You know, domesticated superheroes dealing with family life and all that stuff. Sure, we see it with Spider-Man and stuff, but this is a family. Everyone is a super, and you know, it kind of has an X-Men vibe. You know, they're illegal and all that stuff, and so the magic was there. It was something we've never seen before, and I think that's the issue going into the sequel, because that magic is something that we're accustomed to now, and you know, it's like, okay, cool, we know about The Incredibles, and so I think that's where that's coming from, because I'm kind of on the same wavelength as you, is I think it's a great film. I really do. Like, I barely have any problems with it, but I think that magic that's missing from the first one is what people are rating the second one on, which you can mention that, but I don't think that should really affect your grade. It is
a bit unfair. My grade will be based mostly, I mean, obviously sequels are not islands. They are connected to another thing.
And this one is literally connected.
It literally connected because it takes up exactly where the first one left off. It really does, like you said, it feels like a long movie that just happened to come out, 14 years apart. And yeah, my rating, I just want to make clear to people, will be based on this movie, but
correct.
There is going to be an element of how it kind of feels like the climax of the first movie in some way, because of the fact that it's in two parts. Now they kind of leave it open at the end of this one to pick up in the third one, kind of like the first one ended to me. There's a similar note of like cliffhanger-y kind of thing, but we don't know what it's about. In any case, yes, it does kind of feel like it's the second half of a really long movie, but I'm going to very much try to consider this movie on its own, and I think on its own, I'll say this, both on its own and maybe kind of as a second half of a really long movie that comprises the first and second, it doesn't quite live up to that first half, if you will. It doesn't live up to the first movie quite, but that shouldn't be some reason to overreact to like saying it's bad or saying it's super disappointing. I think that's way overstating it for sure. And it's really just not as good because it's not quite as refined. And there's one specific element to the first movie that was a lot more interesting and complex than this one. Than a similar element in this one, and so that's basically the reason why my grade will be as it is, and why my grade isn't the A that I gave the first one. And that's just to reveal it, that's what I gave the first one. So yes, to kind of take over. I'll go ahead and do my review first. Is that fine?
Mean, Joel, you were on a roll. I was just basking in your glory while you were on a roll. I was like, Joel, just keep going, and then you stopped to ask me. So, Joel, okay. Take it away. Right. Give us your spin on Incredibles 2. Which, by the way, real quick, does it bother you that they didn't put the in front?
Well, I mean, hey, as Justin Timberlake said, it's cleaner. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
all right. No, it is kind of annoying because, especially going with the fact that it kind of feels like the second half of the first movie, that they don't have the...
It just makes it even worse.
Yeah, it's strange. All right, so yes, I'll just kind of get my caveat out of the way. A big part of the first movie that I thought was really special was the villain. And if you remember, the villain of the first movie was, of course, Syndrome, voiced in that one by Jason Lee. And he was very complex because while we've seen, the story before of the kid who meets his hero, finds out that the hero isn't what he thinks, and kind of grows up to resent him, Syndrome took that to the extreme. He became a mass murderer, which recently, for some reason, because of some bizarre tying Brad Bird's movies to Ayn Rand, has become an argument that Syndrome somehow is the real hero of that story, which I don't understand. Anyway, completely nonsense considering he's a mass murderer. But while he wasn't an entirely sympathetic person, he was kind of a sympathetic villain. That means that he was still a villain, but you kind of felt for the pathetic way his character turned out. And it was very pathetic, kind of pitiful, if you will. And so I thought that there was a lot of complexity there to that character, to his dynamic with Mr. Incredible, to his resentment toward the person that he once idolized for, and let's face it, kind of unfairly screwing him over as a kid. Syndrome, or as he was then I think named Buddy, he was kind of broke into his car, was going to go off on an adventure, and was kind of left in the dust by Mr. Incredible, who kind of snubbed his nose at him, which is kind of rude. I mean, even if you kind of notice a bit of an abusive, obsessive quality in a kid, you shouldn't just do that. Try to help them at least a little bit. Don't just be mean to them. And Syndrome grew up to resent that, and he took it out on everybody else. And he was abusive. He was a creep, and he was a villain. But he was also complex. He was at least slightly sympathetic to the degree that you could kind of comprehend where he was coming from. He was a jilted kid, and that's what his motivation was. And so this movie, and I'm not going to reveal, I'm just going to say that it's a mysterious villain named the Screenslaver. It might be a terrible pun, but it is actually a fairly menacing villain. But while the villain is menacing, it isn't really complex. There's really not a whole lot going on there. There is an element of resentment once we find out who it is. I'm not going to go into that because that's spoilers. But it's kind of a generic, broad resentment that I found a little less interesting than Syndrome's very specific resentment. And it also to kind of go back to the weird, bizarre idea that Brad Bird's movies, minus Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, all the ones that he wrote basically, are somehow Ayn Randian in terms of how they exalt exceptionalism. It's stupid because they're always trying to push back against the fact that exceptionalism is so perfect. So just want to get that out there. Looking at the evidence, on the evidence of his movies, including like Tomorrowland and The Iron Giant, there is no exaltation of exceptionalism above effort. That's not what's going on here. It's not Randian. It's not objectivist. It's very much centrist, because he's talked about how he's a centrist. I'm going to push aside politics from now on. This movie again deals in that kind of belief system, and it does it in a fairly interesting way. But I felt like it wasn't really interesting through the prism of the villain this time, like it was last time. And that's something that I found special about the first movie, was kind of lacking in this one. A bit of a less interesting villain, especially when we find out who it is, because it all kind of leads up to a chase that's exciting but fairly generic. And so it's a bit of a caveat. It's a very small one in the big picture, though, because almost everything else about this movie is so special. So we have this to get to. I'll get to Elastigirl later, because there's a whole thing with her that I found really kind of touching and involving and engaging. I'm going to get to the fatherhood parts of this movie first, because this actually is very much a perfect movie for Father's Day. So obviously half of the story takes place at the Parr home, and his name is Bob Parr. And yes, I'm going to just say this right now. I just discovered today what the pun surrounding their last name is. So if you can figure that out, good on you. All right. So Bob is at home with Violet, Jack, and Dash. He has just recently discovered, as of the climax of the first movie, that Jack has powers, very wide-ranging ones that haven't really been seen before. So he's dealing with that. Violet's dealing with a very specific boy problem. She was going to go on a date. The boy saw her in her costume, and his memory had to be erased, which has unintended side effects. And meanwhile, Dash kind of is pushed to the background a little bit. He's kind of annoyed at the fact that he's got to eat vegetables. It's not a really very complicated problem. He's kind of pushed off to the side. That's a little disappointing. because there was a bit of a focus on him in the first movie that I felt like was lost here. But nevertheless, this story is all about Bob's resilience as a father. He hasn't had this kind of lack of sleep before, and so it turns into a kind of a comedy of errors in a certain way. That he's discovering Jack's powers through Jack's insistence upon not sleeping, upon walking through walls, upon fighting the neighborhood raccoon, upon just kind of being silly, and it's all very moving because we get a bit of a portrait of Bob's shifting personality. He's having to adjust tremendously to a new job, especially in the wake of his wife kind of getting a job. And I found it tremendously satisfying, very funny, especially because they animate Jack to be insanely adorable. So funny. Every single facial expression of his kind of breaks the tension of a scene in a very specific and funny way. I'm thinking of a tense moment at dinner between husband and wife that then immediately cuts to the kids, and we get this silly face from Jack, and it breaks the tension, and it's perfect. And I love this half of the movie, but it would be nothing without the other half, because this is a movie that separates the family to make a point about what that separation does. The kind of the toll it takes in very simple comedic terms, but surprisingly mature ones too. And so you have this other plot with Elastigirl being drawn into this PR kind of stunt work where she's having to go out and fight crime, and she ends up coming up against the screenslaver when she saves a train from being derailed. And a great scene, by the way. Can I just say that train scene, man, is a showstopper. Great action, great cuts. It diverges from the usual train action sequences in very particular ways because of the ways that it uses her powers of stretching herself to enormous degrees. And so it's not just a vehicle for action, although it is one, and the action is terrific. It's also saying a lot about how she's kind of achieving her own agency as a woman, away from her husband's spotlight. And I really like that until, kind of the climax. A lot of people are being used as pawns in this. But in any case, it's a really complex and mature examination of, for the first time, her role beyond being a mother, her role as a hero or as a heroine, whatever. I'm just going to say hero. And I found that to be incredibly satisfying. And so, yeah, I think that the performances work to a great degree in helping with us, in helping with this being so satisfying. I think that Craig T. Nelson is great. He was great in the first movie, but in this one he's able to add more layers, more nuance to his role. He's playing a different kind of role this time. He's not in on the action a whole lot, and so he's able to kind of reel back a bit. And I think that Nelson does a terrific job. And you have Holly Hunter, who's obviously a national treasure, one of the best actresses ever, and she is absolutely terrific here in her role. And I think that it's terrific. And then of course you have the kids. I forgot the boy's name. The one who voices Dash now is, hold up, people, Huck Milner, who takes over for Spencer Fox from the first movie. And he's a lot of fun, obviously. But then you have Sarah Vowell, who plays Violet, and she's her usual she has this great sound of like superb indifference that is just terrific. And obviously, Samuel L. Jackson returns as Frozone. You got Bob Odenkirk as the mogul, Catherine Keener as a sister, and it's just a great cast. A lot of great names. Jonathan Banks. It's interesting. You got a Better Call Saul reunion here because Jonathan Banks, even though they never interact, you got Jonathan Banks as the who was, of course, Mike Ehrmantraut on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul as the as the boss man, the one that kind of handles the pars as they go about their daring do. And then you have Bob Odenkirk as this very personable businessman who doesn't realize his place in this story. Let's just say that. And anyways, just great voice work all around. The action sequences, I'm just going to get to those next. They're stunning, all of them. Animation lets it loose. These action sequences lay to waste anything in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, just about. They are terrific. Great editing, great score, of course. Just perfectly choreographed, and yeah, I just love them. The train sequence is great. There's a really fun bit on a kind of pairing up between a ship and a plane at the end, and throughout there's a little fist fight. Interestingly enough, that works really well, and I just like that. And yeah, so it's just a really satisfying entertainment all around. I think it is kind of missing in some spaces the things that made the first film special, but I think it's enormously satisfying, and so that's why I'm going to give it. I'm sort of stuck between two, but either a B plus or an A minus. Pretty much, probably an A minus is what I'm going with. So it's not perfect. It's not the best Pixar movie in years or whatever because Coco came out a few months ago, but it is very satisfying and a lot of fun and surprisingly mature and well balanced between the action and the comedy and the drama. And I also want to give a shout out, of course, to Brad Bird himself, who voices Edna Mode, who comes back to some degree in this story. Really fun scene. So yeah, just I like it a lot. Very, very satisfied and happy with the final product.
Yeah, it's what, like I said before, it's one of those movies. As soon as it gets done, I'm like, can we see a third one? Can we see it like right now? Because the thing I really like about the Incredibles universe is that it's so inviting. Like as soon as these movies start, you are immediately hooked into this universe, this real world where it feels really grounded in some type of reality that's kind of mimics our own, but it's an animated form, and that's what's kind of grasping about it, because it's adventurous, it's humorous, it's got a lot of heart, it's about family, it's superheroes, it's action, it's everything you want in entertainment, and that's what Brad Bird does best. He balances everything so well. Just like with the first one, where you have Elastigirl being the housewife and Mr. Incredible going out and do the superhero business. Now it's swapped. And now we get to see, like what Joel said, how it takes a toll on, Mr. Incredible's case now, where he's having a little bit more difficulty doing it because he's not used to taking care of the kids by himself, and he's dealing with all the boring life issues that we all go through with on a daily basis ourselves, and it makes it entertaining because there's a lot of humor that's kind of peppered throughout there, with either Jack trying to figure out his powers, or a really funny thing where Dash finds a remote on the wall and he's moving the house around like in kind of like a movement type of deal. I won't ruin the joke, but yeah, the sequel, it's just like with the first one, where it has that wonderful balance where we see the home life, we see the family comedy, we see the family drama, we see the exciting action sequences, which I gotta tell you, Joel nailed it on the head. These action sequences are breathtaking, and when you put them in animated form, you realize what you're watching is animated, but they're actually filmed and edited in such a way they feel like it's live action. Like that's what's so great about it. And that train sequence in the beginning was exhilarating, and then it cuts to, like what Joel said, a fist fight in the middle of the movie, but it's more of like a horror setting. It's kind of an amazing shift in tone, but it works. It actually creeped me out a little bit. And then the last...
Yeah, there's like a strobe light effect going on in the background, and so the cuts are between the big, the strobe light, and also between the punches, and it just creates this weird disorienting effect. I won't reveal anything more than that because that's fairly vague. But But yeah, it's super off kilter, if you will, and
Yeah,
it's really
it
cool.
reminded me of like when movies like have characters like we gotta go find the hacker or whatever, and it's like a dirty apartments and like it's just dark and damp and dirty, and you're like, I don't want to go anywhere near there. Elastigirl does it. It's a really great sequence, and I kind of agree with Joel. The last action sequence, while thrilling to watch with this giant yacht and this plane, it did feel kind of a little lackluster compared to the first one with the train. But it was still exciting to watch.
Yeah,
Either
if
way.
it just felt it wasn't anything to do with the craft. It just felt a little obligatory. Like they had to lead us up to that. And it's just kind of like the stakes weren't as high as in the first movie to me at the end, and so it's just like, yeah, that's
Exactly,
basically my
because
point.
and that kind of leads me into the only problem I have with it, which is exactly what you just pointed out. The reason why the end action sequence wasn't as kind of threatening or as exhilarating as like the first action sequence or even the first movie is because you could easily stop this villain. You could easily stop what they're trying to do, and it's even as simple as taking off maybe a piece of headwear. And it's like
Yeah.
it's very simple, and that kind of bleeds me into my problem is that the villain is not as good as as Syndrome. And the problem is they establish this kind of like, dark, which by the way, Pixar, are you trying to traumatize people with Coco and now this with like I will just say guns? It's just incredible that they keep getting away with this. You're gonna screw all our brains up. They set up the villain with a pretty convincing backstory, but the problem lies where Joel just pointed out, when this villain is basically telling the superheroes their plan and how they foiled it and what they were doing. It's extremely broad. Where like Syndrome was like a specific case where it was so specific that we were able to hone in on that character and we were able to sympathize with him, understand him, know a little bit more about him. The problem with the villain in this one is that it's so broad that when the villain is revealed, you're like, I don't really care. Like, I get what you're doing, but I don't feel that punch as I did with the first one. It just, I don't know, it just seemed to kind of fall flat a little bit for me. Just because with the whole kind of broad scope of it, and it's not because of the performances, which I can kind of go into now. I think the voice acting is incredible. Just like with there you go. Just like with like with Toy Story or Wreck-It Ralph, I think these people are casted perfectly. Even the newcomers, with like Bob Odenkirk or Catherine Keener, they play a wonderful brother-sister duo. To where at one point I recognized I was hearing them, but as the movie kept going on, I'm like, oh, I'm just watching these characters, like because they were casted so well that you just don't think of them as their as the actor and actress. You're like, okay, they're these characters, and that goes into Holly Hunter and Craig T. Nelson once again, totally embodying Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, to a point where like there are a few moments in this one that weren't in the first movie that kind of shocked me in a good way, because in the first one they had marital disputes. But in this one, they have a lot more disputes, and for some weird reason, their acting was a little bit better in this one, to where, like, I felt like I was watching two live people arguing in a hotel room. And it's like, it was kind of impressive to see Holly Hunter and Craig T. Nelson, kind of show their range a little bit more than they did the first one, which is what you're supposed to do in a sequel. You're supposed to grow on a character and really, you can sink your teeth in with the first movie, but it's nice to actually like try some different things out and have different inflections in your voice or different ways you say things and how it comes across. And it's just, I just thought they did a as good or even better job in the sequel, because I think they really have gotten used to their characters over these years, to where it was almost like just putting a glove on a hand. It was just that simple. And of course, Samuel L. Jackson's really great as Frozone, no problems there. And I think everyone else, with like Bob Odenkirk and Catherine Keener, all the newcomers, wonderful job. Definitely no issues with that. Once again, just like with the first one, gotta give a shout out to my boy Giacchino. I love the score in this one as well as the first one. I mean, it's one of the most iconic Pixar themes they've ever done. I can hum it in my head and know, how each note goes. And hell, you can even like go outside right now, open your door, and start singing, and people will know what you're singing. And I thought it was really cool how Giacchino in this one, especially with that second action sequence, he kind of twisted the Incredibles theme a little bit, and it's just like what happened with Infinity War, where like you take the theme and you kind of twist it in a more like upsetting, kind of dreadful, disorienting manner, and it actually worked for that sequence. And I just thought the score was really well done, and it gets you pumped up. I'm gonna call it like it is. It gets you pumped up, like when you hear it, da 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 da. Like you get pumped up because it's old fashioned type of like 50s, 60s, era type music, set in kind of this modern animated film, and it gives it its identity and it gives it its unique voice, and the score is just wonderful. But yeah, from start to finish, man, I was into it. I was into the family drama. I was into the comedy. I was into the action sequences. I like when Edna Mode popped up. I like the fact that Jack was learning his powers, and that was fascinating to watch. It's one of those movies where you can say that the magic from the first one is lost a little bit. I completely understand, but I'm not going to let that affect this movie. And I think how it stands on its own, as a Pixar film, as a sequel to The Incredibles, and just my overall experience, I had a lot of fun. I was exhilarated. I was it was heartfelt, so I felt a lot for these characters. The humor got me every single time. I think most of the jokes, like 99% of the jokes, were actually a hit for me. Nothing was a miss. I just think the villain could have been handled a little bit better, but I'm kind of with Joel. I'm going to give it an A-. And if the villain was up to par, another pun, up to par as the first one, then I would have given it an A. But I just think the villain in this one, little lackluster. And even when the villain was revealed, I was like, I called that from a mile away. It's like it's very obvious. Like when the characters come on screen, you're like, oh, one of them's probably going to screw them over. So yeah, it is what it is. But just to kind of bleed off into the future of this franchise, because I know that we're recording this on Friday, so we're not getting any box office results. This movie's going to kill at the box office. So here's my... It
made 18.5 million at the Thursday previews, which is pretty terrific.
Yeah, so. If I had to predict right now, it's going to get anywhere from 150 to 170. It's going to be big. And my only plea to Disney is, 1, don't wait as long. 2, also don't rush Brad Bird. If he needs a little extra longer than 2 or 3 years, I'm cool with that. Just don't wait 14. And the last thing, as much as I enjoy being in this universe, and as much as I enjoy them, the kids as kids and the parents kind of like in their, midlife crisis type of era, I want it to age. I want Brad Bird to age them up, and I want them to be older. I want Violet to be in college. I want Dash to be in high school, and I want Jack to still discover his powers and what he wants to do when he's in middle school. Have the parents a little older and do a story from there. I don't want them to make this franchise longer than it should be, and I want them to just capture it just right, where if they do a third, maybe a fourth one, and call it quits. I just don't want them to tire out this franchise and become lazy. You know what I'm saying? I want it to remain special. And hell, even if they just do a third one and just cap it off as a really great trilogy, I'm cool with that. But I think for the next one, I think they should be aged up, and that's just my opinion. If you want to make them the same age, that's fine. But I think the best way to progress this story is to make it decades later than what their characters are. But that's just my kind of deal. I mean, Joel, like, do you think they should continue on directly after the second one, or do you think they should age them up for the third one?
It would be interesting if they aged them up. I like that idea. It would also be funny considering they opened the second movie right after the first one ended. And then they opened the third movie years later.
Yeah, right.
It would be kind of funny. But yeah, I absolutely think that kind of following these kids, especially into adulthood, would be interesting, for sure. Because obviously they feel like a real family unit, so aging them up would be fitting, I think. And so yeah, for sure. And it's going to make a lot of money, as you said. It's a crazy amount of money for Thursday previews, and I'm happy. I was not one of those. I saw it just a couple hours before we recorded. But
can I say one last thing to kind of end this off? Pixar, I cannot believe it's taking you this long, but I can't believe I watched a Pixar film with a curse word in it. Like that was kind of shocking to me that I sat there and I was like, they used the word hell and damn, and I'm like, now it's in the rating description, but I was still shocked that Pixar allowed Brad Bird to just keep that in there. I was like, oh, I guess they are moving more into kind of adultish stuff with their PG stuff, so I'm cool with that.
Now, if they move Violet into high school or something, it'd be funny if the next one's like PG-13 and she's,
oh my God.
and she's now mouthing off. And also, I really quickly want to mention the short that played in front of this, which is called Bow. I think that's how you pronounce that.
Yeah.
Which was really cute, but also kind of dark. And
I mean, I understand what they were going for without spoiling it, but there is one particular scene where it is extremely effed up. Now, I will say, even though it was weird, kind of effed up, and still heartwarming at the same time, it is miles better than that 22-hour long short film that we got in front of Coco with the Frozen stuff. Okay, so at least I will give it that. But the Bao short was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting to say the least. It's going to be interesting to see how much of a shelf life it has for the Oscars, because you know those things usually get nominated. Obviously, the Frozen short was the Pixar shorts. That wasn't a Pixar produced one. This was, and those usually do pretty well. But it'll be interesting to see how it's received, because it is quite interesting. I sat next to a little small family, mother, father, son, and the mother was like, "Man, that was really dark for Pixar short." So I mean, it's interesting for sure. It's good though. I think it's quite good, and there's no dialogue in it. It's very simple, but there's a lot going on in it, and I think that they did a commendable job for sure. All right, well, that's it for this week. Next week we have next week's going to be an interesting one. I don't know which one of these we're going to do first, but we're going to do a brief shared review of Won't You Be My Neighbor, which I saw this week, and I'm actually reviewing this week on my website. By the time most listen to this, it'll be up.
Jeez, Joel, get with the times. I saw that a month and a half ago.
You know what? You can just be quiet. Anyway, we're going to do a little shared review of that next week, because Chase is pooping out on me. I'm just kidding. Chase is not seeing Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. I am going to be doing a solo review of that, or should I say a Star Wars story review of that.
Oh my God. Joel, if you bring that up into any other saying for the rest of the year, you are fired. I am so sick and tired of that movie being in the public conscience. Please just let it die off and wither away. I'm
gonna bring it up every week. All right.
God.
So I'm seeing that one alone. I'm gonna do a review alone.
Now, okay. Before you keep throwing me under the bus, because the bus tires hurt right now. Listen, folks, I don't get paid that much in my job, and I rely on screening invites to send me to stuff so I can do these for you guys. I don't mind paying for movies. I just don't have that much to spare. Now, I only had enough money for one movie in this 2-week pay period. It was either Incredibles 2 or Jurassic World. Now, if you're looking at it like a sane person, which one are you going to pick? The one that was predecessor was 3 years ago or 14 years ago? Obviously, I was going with The Incredibles 2. That's why I can't get to Jurassic World. I apologize. Hopefully, maybe in the future, knock on wood, we can get a Patreon up, and whatever money we get from that, I can use towards tickets so I can actually review stuff for you guys. But for right now, got to make choices. Welcome to adulting. But that is why I am not reviewing it. But, Joel's going to do just fine without me. I wouldn't really have anything to add intelligently anyway. So that's what I wanted to bring up so you guys aren't just like, why are you not reviewing? Do you just hate dinosaurs? It's like, nah, fam. I grew up with the Jurassic Park movies. It pains me that I won't be able to review it, but it just is what it is, Joel. But that's what
I know you'll probably catch it if you're bored on like HBO or something. I'm sure. So
I'm probably gonna catch it on the last week in June.
Okay.
As like a early matinee or something. But
yeah.
So that's what I plan on doing. So apologize. Once again, but that will be next week for episode 235. Obviously, we can't do box office because we're recording this on a Friday, but maybe on Sunday I can put the top 5 down below in the description. And speaking of the description, Joel, where can the lovely people find you online?
You can find a large portion of my writing on joelonfilm.com. I got a lot of reviews coming this weekend. And interestingly enough, separately speaking, not a lot the next 2 weekends. But yeah, that's just how it works sometimes. And then in other, elsewhere, you can find some at dallasmoviescreenings.com. I haven't reviewed anything for them for a while, but you can find all of my film festival reviews there. And then you can follow me on Twitter at RealJoel Copling. That's REL, as always. And on Letterboxd at jcopling. So just go find me there, folks, and I forgot what I was going to say with that last sentence, so just save me from this, Chase. Tell me where you're found on the internet.
Well, I can be found on many different websites, a lot of them illegal in many countries, but you know what, for right now, in Twitter world, you can find me at Real Chase Lee. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get extra views. I mean, I just pimped out 2 indie films that I reviewed this week. Go check that out. And of course, whatever I don't review on this podcast, please go check over there. And speaking of this podcast, whether you're listening on iHeartRadio, iTunes, SoundCloud, or Spreaker, please share this around and let people know out there that this is your movie podcast that you like listening to, and maybe we can grow this community a little bit more. And just I welcome everyone. I love hearing different opinions, and I love when people call me out and be like, you're an idiot, this is wrong, this is the correct opinion of the movie. It's like, cool. I like the fact that people get passionate about this stuff. Joel and I get passionate about stuff all the time. We argue over fictional movies, like fictional characters, stuff that isn't even real, and that's what's so great about it. But yeah, all the links will be in the description below. Please let us know what you thought of Incredibles 2. And for next week, Jurassic World, and we'll do a little Mr. Rogers, you know what I'm saying? So that will do it for this week. Joel, did you have anything else to add?
I just wanted to remind everyone, as always, that I am right about the Fast and the Furious movies.
Well, you know how I said that I welcome opinions and people are open to whatever they want to say? Joel is obviously wrong about that, but it won't go through to his head. But maybe we can do that when Fast and Furious 800 comes out. Maybe he'll like it then. But no, we will definitely be reviewing Fast 9, and you'll probably hear an argument. Anyways, so that will do it for this week's episode, guys, of Real Me and Cole, the Movie Podcast. Thank you for listening. You guys are awesome. And hey, listen, if you made it through this entire movie podcast and you're not a movie fan, well, maybe we convinced you to be one or something. So I'm Chase. That's Joel over there. Let's play that music and see you guys next week for it's the little Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom Part 2. I don't even know what it's called anymore. All right, so see you guys later.
Bye.